Hello everyone and welcome back to Agent Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Sigmar, and in this video we're going to continue my Beasts of Chaos series as part of the Age to Go Army Archive, and in this particular video we are going to be looking at their Monsters of Chaos. So you may be wondering what Monsters of Chaos are. They're going to be things like Chaos Warhounds, Chaos Spawn, Chimeras, those sorts of things. So firstly, before we go into the actual review, what I want to say, and this is something I've been doing with a lot of my Beasts of Chaos videos, is a lot of people bad talk about them. They say, you know, they're not the most competitive army out there, which they're certainly not the most competitive army out there. That's absolutely true. But what some people do, they also basically, you know, kick them really hard when they're down and say they're completely unplayable and really unbelievably shit. So the idea of this series is to show that, yep, they're not the most competitive army out there by a long shot, but what can you do with them to help you win your games? As this is an army that you win games with a good generalship rather than the army carrying you every inch across the battlefield. And also on the review, what you'll see, there'll be like little unit cards I've made up, just telling you a few rules about the unit and also my sort of overall summary of what I think of the unit if we look at like positives and negatives. So you can feel free if you want to skip through a bit of the video and stuff, just get a summary of what I think of them. If you haven't got a lot of time, absolutely fine. Or just to help you navigate throughout the video in case you're resuming it. Also, there will be a picture of someone's painted models on the unit cards as well, which I've put their name as well. So if you like that, you know, let us know in the comments. That's always good to hear. Okay, so with all the pre-ramble out of the way, let us start our first unit review. So firstly what we do is we look at a bit of the lore before we look at see what they are in game, and this of course is going to be the Chaos Warhounds. So they are akin to ferocious hunting dogs, but with barbed horns and serpentine tentacles protruding from their heads and bodies. These mutated descendants of bloodhounds and wolves prowl the darkened forests and shadowy mountain passes of each realm. There they prey upon lost and weary souls who stray from the relative safety of civilization. Following the scent of fear and desperation exuded by such individuals, the Warhounds announce the coming carnage with an unnatural howl. Upon hearing this chilling sound, their prey is filled with an inescapable sense of dread. Few mortals are swift enough to outrun the Warhounds, and those who stand and fight face a gruesome death, torn limb from limb in the slavering jaws of the hunting pack. Chaos Warhounds are often found wherever the beast herds gather, skulking at the fringes of brutal feasts. They dart out to gobble up discarded pieces of meat, or work together to pull down lone ungors, overly intoxicated centaurs, and those beasts that have been injured in challenges. When the savagery of a beast herd spills into civilized lands, the Warhounds run alongside raging throngs of Gorkin, informed by warped instincts that a great hunt has begun. And that is a little bit about the lore of the Chaos Warhounds. Obviously quite basic there, so I try to stretch it as much as I could. But let's see what they're like on the table. So, firstly, they are an other unit, so they're not battle line, they're not a behemoth, they're nothing like that, they're just simply another unit. You can take a minimum size unit of them for 10 for 80 points, and a max size unit of them for 30, which is going to cost you 210 points. So yes, you do get a discount there if you go for the max 30. You will be saving 30 points. So, you know, it's not the biggest, but, you know, I think I've seen a few like Mass Legion discounts of 20, so it's not the smallest either. So, yeah, that's not too bad. And then looking to see what they're like actually on the rules themselves, on the tabletop with their own war scroll. Firstly, having a look at their stat wheel, we've got a movement of 10 inches, we've got a 6+ save, bravery 4, and 1 wound. So nothing too impressive there, apart from the movement is very good. You may have been thinking, if you're coming from Death like I do, and I compare Chaos Warhounds to Dire Wolves, and I was thinking 10 of these guys for 80 points, 2 wins a pot. That's so good, but yeah, they do only have 1 wound, so it's just something to bear in mind, and they have a 6+ save. And then looking at the description, it says a unit of Chaos Warhounds has any number of models, each armed with slavering jaws. So with their one melee weapon, which of course is the Slavering Jaws, let's see what it does. So it's got a 1 inch range, 2 attacks, force hit, force wind, no rend, and 1 damage. To be honest, there's nothing there to sing and dance about, but there's nothing there to complain about either of how cheap this unit is here. So looking at their one and only ability, it is in your movement phase. If you declare that this unit will run, do not make a run roll. Instead, add 6 inches to the move characteristics of all models in this unit for that phase. And that ability is called Outrunners of Chaos. So already we can see with these guys, that's pretty much all it is, apart from their keywords, which is Chaos, Beasts of Chaos, Monsters of Chaos, and Chaos Warhounds. Already we can see with these guys, there's not too much to them. But what there is to them is their speed. And that's honestly the only reason you would take these is speed, and also, which I also put as tactical, is like using things for like shielding, bubble wrapping, you know, your more squishy or more valuable units in with Chaos Warhounds, as because you do get 10 of them for 80 points. The screen you can make with these guys would be huge, because I imagine they're on the same size base as direwolves, and when I use 10 direwolves, which costs me 140 points, so 60 points more as a screen, yeah, like it's huge. I know, like it's more than enough to cover like 6 Morgus Archai as an example. So you can use these guys to wrap around your big blocks of, you know, Bestigors, or Gores, or Zangors. Definitely be able to keep up with speed of them, especially if you don't want to charge these guys, which you would only charge these into take an objective, or if there was some sort of strategy behind it, you wouldn't just charge these guys into attack for no reason, because they would not win. These guys can easily keep up as being a screen, because if they, like I say, they don't charge, they get to make that run, which is going to be an automatic 6 for these guys. It's not a d6. You can roll a d6 for some reason if you would like to, but it's just a 6. So these guys are moving 16 inches. Yes, 16 inches is not charging, but still a huge movement, you know, capacity for a screen. So I am a fan of these guys. I would, if I was putting them in my list with Beast Chaos, and like I said, I don't play Beast Chaos, but you know, as an outsider point of view, if I was putting a list, I would probably maybe add these guys in as, like, see how many points I've got left over when I get to, like, you know, 1800 points. I've got a couple more 100 points to spend, and I'm not really too sure to spend them on. I'd put these guys in. Or these guys may be a staple for me, because I want to have that screen, because your units have not got the best save. Yes, these guys will die, but they've only cost you 80 points, and that is what they're there for. And also, the unit 10 of these guys is very quick to grab objectives, because, like we say, when we look at a lot of the Brayhorn units, and they can, you know, run in charge, and that's really good and stuff, but that is very random mechanic to guarantee very good movement. It's you can, on average, you get good movement because you get the run and stuff, and you know your standard Gores don't move too slowly, but these guys automatic 16 inches move to grab objectives that, you know, end game if your opponent has left them unguarded or something. So I think these guys do have a place. Don't look at them as you know, a good unit. As like some of the negatives I put, for example, is, you know, we'll lose most of your fights. When I say most, I mean you charge these guys and the zombies, you know, they'll probably win that one. But against most other things, they will lose. They'll have to. These guys are in combat, not the weakest thing, but sort of just above it. So if you charge them into the weakest thing, they'll do all right. But apart from that, they won't, because they've got a bad save and, you know, very bad bravery. So when a few of these guys die, yeah, loads of them are running away. So, like I say, use them as a screen, use them as objective grabbing. Late game, don't make them fight for the objective. Just make them be able to steal it. So yeah, that's my personal thoughts with these guys. Something else you can also do, like with Chaos Warhounds, when I say about objectives quickly, is do what I do with Diables, which is if you're playing a battle plan where there's objectives in the centre of the board, and you go first, chuck some Chaos Warhounds, just like one unit on a middle objective. So that means your opponent is then going to need to trade your Chaos Warhounds for their stronger unit to be able to smash the Chaos Warhounds off that objective in that turn. So then when they've done that, then their big strong unit is sort of undefended on this objective, and then you can hit them with your heavy stuff. So, you know, lots of shenanigans you can do with that. I'm just trying to make it seem more than a, you know, sub-par unit with its, you know, stats. So there are lots you can do with them, just, like I said, not for combat purposes. Okay, so with that, I managed to talk about Chaos Warhounds for a very long time. Let us move on to our next unit, which of course is going to be the Chaos Spawn, which, to be honest, will be a pretty quick conversation. But we'll have a look at their lore anyway. So, Chaos Spawn, near the most horrid nodes of Chaos power, shambling abominations roam without purpose. Their insane wailing echoes throughout the warped landscape. These Chaos Spawn were once mortal beings, creatures that became so infused with chaotic energies that their bodies now ceaselessly mutate into gruesome new configurations. Bones protrude through muscle and skin, grown into long spear-like spikes. Internal organs burst violently outwards, spraying acidic juices before being enveloped into the creature's body. Once more, limbs twist into withering tentacles that lash out in all directions. As the Chaos Spawn lurches forward, such anarchy of form obliterates the creature's sanity, leaving naught in its mind but rage, anguish, and seething hatred. Chaos Spawn serve as a hideous reminder of the fickle nature of chaos. Many beasts seek Blessen's mutation and present their gruesome offerings in the bases of the Herdstone in order to bask in the corrupting glow of the monolith. Some receive longer horns, an extra limb, or a third eye, but those whose offerings are not worthy, as well as those who have already received an abundance of gifts, may instead be subjugated to the ultimate mutation, their body ripping itself apart as they are transformed into a Chaos Spawn. So change, the creature will mindlessly follow its beast herd into battle, striking out at whatever enemies are in their path until, by an enemy blade or its own spanning devolution, it is reduced to a lifeless heap of flesh. So that is the lore for a Chaos Spawn. So very similar to your standard, Slaves of Darkness, Chaos Spawn, they're all kind of the same. They're all champions or warriors of the gods who have fought so hard to try and get as much chaos energy in them as much as possible to be as powerful as they can, but sometimes it overwhelms them, or sometimes the gods are not happy with them, so they punish them with that. Obviously here it's a little bit different unless the Beast of Chaos are dedicated to one of the 4 Chaos gods, which is not in most cases, but if they are, then obviously it's that god that's punished them, but if not, it's just chaos energy in total has just overwhelmed them. So with that, let's have a quick look to see what it's like in the rules. So a Chaos Spawn, firstly looking at where it is in the game. So it is going to cost you 50 points for one, and you can take 6 for 300 points, but there's no discount there. It's an other unit as well, so similar to the Chaos Warhounds. And looking at its War Scroll, firstly looking at its stat wheel, it's got a 2d6 movement, a 5+ save, bravery 10, and 5 wounds. Then looking at its description, it says a unit of Chaos Spawn has any number of models, each armed with freakish mutations. And what I just want to say, just in case you guys have picked it up already, going, well, you said you can only have 6 in the unit here at maximum. Now it says you can have any. That's for open play stuff if you're quite new. Match play, you have to look at the points section of the General's Handbook. So if you find that a bit confusing, don't worry, just look at the General's Handbook. So looking at its abilities, so the first one really is you can give it a Mark of the Gods. So you can give it either the Korn, Nurgle, Slanesh, or Zeech keyword first time it is set up. So that's just something to bear in mind there. Is it going to come too much in Beast of Chaos Arm on the top of my head? Not too much I can think of unless you've got allies in or you're bringing these guys in Blades of Corn or something. Okay, and the next ability is going to be Rivering Tentacles. So if you roll a double, when determining the number of attacks made by Chaos Spawn's freakish mutations, add 1 to the hit and wound rolls for attacks made by this model until the end of the phase. And you may be wondering, why have I not already gone over the weapon before I'm reading the abilities? Just because personally, I don't think the weapon's much good. It's 2d6 attacks, which sounds good, but I always roll low on that, so that's why I think it's crap. It's got a 1-inch range, force to hit, force to win, no rend, 1 damage. If you get a double 6, and then you're hitting on 3s and winning on 3s, you got 12 attacks, yay! Otherwise, it's just like, this thing's costing you 50 points. You know, we'll get onto something next, but I think it's better than a Chaos Spawn for 50 points. I would also, you know, it's the price of command point as well. You're thinking, well, I've got 50 points left over, should I put it in? Okay, let's look at what I've said about the strengths of this thing. So it's kind of tactical. You can use this guy to get in the way of your opponent. That's where it's come from. It's cheap, which it is for a unit, 50 points for a unit. It's got good bravery. Now, that is true. It's got one of the best braveries, if not the best, in the entire army. Bravery 10. So just bear that in mind. And then it's got 5 wounds, so it's got a high amount of wounds. But let's look at the negatives. It will lose most of its fights. It has a poor save. And it's really random and unreliable. How I'm going to summarise the Chaos Spawn is going to be... Take this guy, if you're going like, you know, Gave Spawn, if that's your way, and there's a lot of Chaos Spawn shenanigans in there, and, you know, when your guys die, it turns Chaos Spawns and everything else. Yeah, use them there. Don't pay for a Chaos Spawn, that's my personal opinion, unless you want something to just sit on a back objective. But like I've already kind of explained, there are better things to do that with. You know, Ungors or even Chaos Warhounds. I just see Chaos Spawn as... It's an extra thing you get depending on how you play your Beasts of Chaos. You can, like, you know, like summon them in and stuff. So I'd use them for that. I wouldn't pay to have them in your army. That's how I'm going to summarise it. The keywords we've got are Chaos Beast, Chaos Mortal, States of Darkness, and Chaos Spawn. I did actually talk about Chaos Spawn for about 25 minutes when I did a 5-hour long as each video. That crashed when I finished. So that never got to be published. So I never want to talk about Chaos Spawn for too long, but that's what it is. You could charge these guys into something with a 6-up save, and they get 12 attacks, and the enemy has to make 9 saves, and they fail most of them, and you've just killed a bunch with 1 Chaos Spawn. But those sort of miracles happen are very, very few often. So I'm very dismissive of the Chaos Spawn, but that's because I think it's pretty crap. But use it for when you get one for free. Essentially, when you get one for free, can't complain. It's an extra unit. It can be a pain in the enemy arse. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna leave it there with the Chaos Spawn. Right, but going on to the next one, which is going to be Razor Gores. So they are a warped breed of Tuskor, mutated to monstrous size and having developed temperaments that are even more ferocious, with thick layers of muscle that bulge to such extent that they often burst through the skin. A Razor Gore has the might to level an enemy formation with a single battering charge. These beasts have the aspect of a gigantic boar with corsets, hair, thick spines bristling from their body, though some are even more warped, with barbed tentacles for limbs or a second mouth at the end of their tail. So let's have a little look to see what these guys are like in game. So again, they are another unit, and very similar to the Chaos Spawn at the same points. So minimum size unit of 1, 50 points, maximum size unit of 6, 4, 300 points. Now, you may be thinking, like, was I laughing a little bit when I was reading the lore? Yeah, I was kind of a little bit, just because, like, a single charge of this can destroy an enemy's formation. Right, so I know Games Workshop always try to make whatever unit you're reading about sound like the most strongest thing there ever is in Age of Sigmar. However, I'm just going to, you know, I don't want to, expectations to be too high. A Razor Gore will not shatter an enemy's formation in this game. But let us have a look at its rules. So, looking at stat rule first, it's got a movement of 10, it's got a 5+ save, it's got bravery 6, and it's got 4 wings. And then having a little look at its description, which again, as we expect for something with one weapon, is going to be quite small. So a unit of Razor Gore has any number of models, each armed with large tusks and hooves. So the large tusks and hooves melee weapon is going to be a 1-inch range, 4 attacks, force hit, freeze wind, -1 rend, 1 damage. So not awful, better than the Chaos Spawn, you know, straight away better than the Chaos Spawn. And then looking at its ability, only has 1 and it's Unstoppable Stampede. Okay, so what does it do? So you can reroll charge rolls with this unit. In addition, if this unit made a charge move in the same turn, an unmodified hit roll of a 6 for an attack made with this unit inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. And then keywords, it's got Chaos Beasts of Chaos, Monsters of Chaos, and Razor Gores. So, my sort of summary of the Razor Gore is that I would say it's kind of tactical. Now again, this is coming from where I was kind of talking about the Chaos one, because you can charge it in, you can type enemy units. It's almost a bit like the Tuskor Chariots, what I was talking about when I talked about them in that video. Use them to type the enemy units. I'd say this guy doesn't do it as well. Yes, he's like cheaper, but you know, he smaller base doesn't do it as well. But I suppose he might be able to get into more nooks and crannies. So it's that. Use this guy to tie people up. Don't use them to. Don't have a unit of 6 of these guys just to charge in and wipe out the enemy if that's your expectation, because they won't do that. Of course, if you want to try and do that, obviously that's cool. But I'm just trying to, you know, say the most we can get out of these guys, use them as a tactical role and not a an offensive output. But with saying that, if you think, oh well, they're not very offensive, then you know, like the reroll of the charge base is not very good. No, it's great because it's really going to help you type those enemy units because they move 10 inches and then you're moving up to 12 inches on the charge. Now, obviously, the average on 2d6 is going to be a 7, and I roll pretty poorly, so I think that a 7 is quite high. But with the reroll, should get at least a 7 for that most times. So, you know, you're looking at a 17-inch movement. It's not bad at all, really. And when you make the charge, you get the chance of doing some mortal wounds, which it's a, you know, it's not much more wound output, but it's something, isn't it? Which might seem on paper not really much to talk about, but when you fight against an enemy army where you can only kill them with mortal wounds, if you have anything that can do mortal wounds in your list, it really does add up to trying to kill the enemy in those circumstances. So, and this guy's got high wounds as well. He's got, you know, 4 wounds. So my overall thoughts with the Razor Gores is I feel like I would have to try them out, see if it would work, but I'd probably say that they do the same job as Tuskor Chariots, and I think Tuskor Chariots do better because they can tie more things up. But that's my opinion, but I'd have to try it out on the table to know for certain. But if you're thinking, I've got 50 points, what do I buy? A Chaos Spawn or Razor Gore? Buy Razor Gore. Honestly, do that. Save your Chaos Spawn for when you get them for free during game. And then moving on to something a bit more exciting is going to be the Cockatrice, I think it's pronounced, or that might just be the name of a bird in our world. I'm not too sure. Anyway, looking a little bit at its lore, it says scores of stone statues dot the desolate wastes, eroded by time and the corrosion of chaos energy. Some missing limbs or bisected at the torso, and those that still have heads wear expressions of pure terror. In such a landscape, a cockatrice lair is sure to be found. Compared to other beasts of chaos, cockatrices are extremely reclusive, emerging from their solitary hollows only when their desire for fresh meat grows strong. They then take wing in search of new prey, following the trail of destruction left by the beast herds into civilized lands. When a beast herd inevitably crosses path with an enemy force, a cockatrice will skulk alongside the outskirts of the conflict, patiently waiting for the ideal time to strike. In a flurry of motion, the cockatrice lunges towards its prey, its feathered form becoming a blur. As it surges forward, its eyes begin to glow with warping energy, and it fixes its gaze upon its targets. Those who return this stare are turned to stone in an instant. Their petrified bodies are rendered completely motionless. Their eyes are set upon by the thrashing Ambrine monster. With sword-like talons, the cockatrice savages its victims, cutting at flesh to ribbons and loosen organs onto the blood-slicked ground. The screams of the dying mingle with the cockatrice's own shrill screeching, all of which resonates in the still conscious minds of those transformed to statues. Only the cockatrice returned to its stone creations, picking them apart bit by bit with a powerful beak. And that is some lore for the cockatrice. So I'll be honest, I think it's quite a cool model, and hearing its lore, I think it's even cooler. I think from when I've reviewed its war scroll, we'll see when we go into it, but it plays quite well to how it's described in the lore. So looking what it's like on the table, so it is actually another unit. It's not a monster, it's still another unit, and it's only 90 points for one. That's pretty cheap, 100 points. So looking at its stat wheel first, it's got a 12-inch movement, it's got 8 wounds, it's got a 6 of save, and it's got a bravery of 5. Not too bad there. Two things that aren't good, obviously, are the terrible save and the not good bravery really at all for something that size. But it's got a high amount of wounds and it's got good movement. So looking at the description of the beast, we have a cockatrice as a single model, armed with petrifying gaze, vicious beak, and sword-like talons. So we get all the attacks. So looking at the missile weapon first, it's got petrifying gaze, so this is like say the one that turns the enemy to stone. It's got a 10-inch range, and then it says see below to see how it works. So we'll get to that now. So do not use the attack sequence for an attack made with a cockatrice's petrifying gaze. Instead of roll a dice. On a 4+, the target suffers D6 mortal wounds. So obviously 50-50, you might not get it off, but if you do get it off, D6 mortals straight away. Very nice there. And then going on to the other two weapons I have, so the melee weapons. So the Vicious Beak, so this is 2-inch range, 2 attacks, 4 state, freeze wound, -1 rend, D3 damage, not too shabby. And then the Sword-like Talons, which is 1-inch range, 4 attacks, 4 hit, 4 wound, no rend, 1 damage. Very meh. At least it's got 4 attacks. And then its last ability is going to be the Madden Frosty. So a cockatrice has attack characteristic of 8 instead of 4 when it's Sword-like Talons. If it makes a charge move in the same turn. Okay, cool. So if it charges, it makes 8 attacks with Sword-like Talons instead of 4. So doubles. That's pretty good. And then looking at the keywords, we've got Chaos, Beasts of Chaos, Monsters of Chaos, Monster, and Cockatrice. So, something to mention there, it is not a behemoth, but it is a monster, which will come into effect sometimes. But for list building, it doesn't count towards one of your, traditional monsters, your behemoth keyword. So, what are my thoughts about this guy? Firstly, it's nice to see some shooting and mortal wound shooting. It is very swingy, unreliable, but when you do get it off, half the time, you can do some mortal wounds, and you may do quite a few mortal wounds at that. But if you look at it and go, D6 mortal wounds, I thought, I'm going to do like 6 mortal wounds to the enemy. I would say you'll do a good amount of mortal wounds to the enemy, like a quarter of the time. Which, I'd still say, once per game, this guy has a chance of doing a nice bit of damage from that mortal wound and petrifying gaze. Its melee weapons are nothing to write home about really at all. But the big thing here is this guy's costing 90 points. So he is tactical again because he has got that, kind of sniping ability. Yes, he has to be close, but if he goes in the outskirts and stuff, should be left alone. He can fly obviously as well, which is good. But he does a bad bravery. He's not great in combat. He's got a very bad save. But I would still give this guy a go. I think what it comes down to is it's tough unit competition. As I know I put down quite a few of my unit cards and stuff. But really, because you have a lot of options in this book. Like, you can spend 90 points in this guy, but it may be better to invest that 90 points somewhere else. However, I would definitely give this guy a go. So I think he could be worth the investment. I think he could be worth just a tiny bit of your army, just to give you that tactical point. If you just send this guy continuously around the flank, so aim towards taking an enemy back objective, like towards the later half of the game, or just make it so the enemy has to, bear this guy in mind, essentially. When they're moving enough, they're having to worry about this guy, then he's already worth his 90 points. Frankly, it's just like another small threat, maybe, just to try and take out some of that, heroes the enemy has behind a chaff line or something, or a screen. And yeah, like the Sigmar has got a better shooting attack. The obviously Skyfires have very good shooting attacks, especially for range. But if you don't have those guys and you want a cockatrice, you already got a cockatrice, I'd definitely give him a go. He could not be very good. I could be completely wrong, but I'd like to see. I think you can make him work. Don't charge him in. Let him do his own thing. He's pretty independent. Let him do his own thing. Let him just be a pain in the arse, the enemy. Which I know I've mentioned that a few times during these videos for these unit reviews, but let the cockatrice just do his own thing, go around the enemy. If the enemy wants to kill him, they're going to have to probably commit more than they would like to do it in most cases. And if the enemy forgets about him, maybe he gets lucky and does a good d6 more wins to the enemy. It's not bad. And if the enemy, like I say, late game, try and take an enemy back objective, if they've just left, I don't know, 10 crit balls on it or something, this guy comes in. Yeah, he's not great in combat, but if he gets the charge, he's got 2 attacks to do d3 damage, and then he's got 8 attacks if he made that charge that do just 1 damage. But that could be enough to win that little combat, especially if he's shot into there first. So yeah, I'm a fan of the cockatrice. He's not, there's no way this guy's broken or anything at all, or maybe not. He's not the most competitive either, but I'll be interested to see what I can do with him. I think definitely give him a go. Oh, something's very cool. That's probably one of the main reasons I'm defending him, but he's got a few good uses. And now, actually moving on to a monster in the Monsters of Chaos army video. I know it's taken about half an hour to get to this point now, but we do actually have something that has the Behemoth trait. I know the cockatrice is a monster, but very small one. But coming out a little bit bigger, here we have the Jabba Slife. So this is kind of like a pure abomination of chaos in, its purest form, but let's see what it says about it in the lore before we look at its rules. So, appearing as a haphazard combination of monstrous toad, muscular slug, drake, and many-limbed insects, Jabba Slifes are the physical embodimentation of anarchy. Their ungainly form belies their effectiveness as apex predators, and each of their manifolds deformates serves to make them even deadlier. A spike-ended tail acts as a brutal club, pulverizing foes with arcing swings. Muck-encrusted forelimbs end in vorpal claws that are sharp enough to slice through iron oak. Should a helpless victim attempt to run, rudimentary wings allow the Jabba Slife short bursts of flight. Its long, twisted, rapentine tongue then shoots out in a blink of an eye, impaling the fleeing prey before drawing them in to be devoured. Those enemies that stand and fight fare little better as they hack at the sagging flesh of the creature. They are coated by showers of black ichor that melts through flesh, metal and bone, reducing the brave warriors to bubbling pools of ooze. Okay, sounds like a lovely creature to come across in the wilds of the Mortal Realms, as all of these beings do. So let's see what it's actually like in game. So like we said, he's Behemoth. So he's also obviously a one model unit. So it's going to cost you 106 points. So pretty damn cheap for a monster and a Behemoth. And let's have a look at its War Scroll. So first things first, the stat wheel. So it's got a 12-inch movement, a 5+ save, 6 bravery, 10 wounds. Fair amount of wounds there. Good movement. The save could be worse, but it's still a poor save. And bravery is not great either. A description: so a Jabba Slife is a single model armed with a slithering tongue and vorpal claws and spiked tails. And obviously, like I sort of say throughout the video, if I pronounce words wrong, which is absolutely 100% what I have just done, I don't care. Okay, and then going on to its weapons, so it gets all of them. So the missile weapons, so the tongue is a 9-inch range, a 1 attack, 3 to hit, 3 to win, -1 d3 damage. You might kill the odd thing with it. Don't get too excited, essentially, with that. And then the meta weapons, so you have the Vorpal Claw, so it's a 1-inch range, 6 attacks, 3 to hit, 3 to wound, -2 and 1 damage. And then the spiked tail, so this is 3-inch range. 1 attack, force to hit, freeze the wound, -1 rend, and D3 damage. So that's obviously... okay, I was going to say the attacks aren't great, but you know, like the claws do have -2 rend to them. Only 1 damage, -2 rend, and freeze and freeze, so it's not too bad. And then the abilities. So you have Aura of Madness. So at the start of your hero phase, roll a dice for each enemy unit that is within 6 inches of any friendly Jabber Slice. On a 6, that unit cannot attempt to cast or unbind, move, or attack until the start of your next hero phase. Which sounds really, really good. You know, oh my god, if you get this off, that's really, you know, you can make the, you know, a really powerful unit not be able to do anything. Absolutely great. Win you the game. All of that goes on a 6. So with that, I'm not even going to say it's going to happen once every game because, you know, it's something you do in your hero phase. Unless they've charged you, alpha strikes you, you're probably in trouble by then anyway. But if they did, then you get your hero phase and this guy's still alive, then you get an extra turn when you can do it. But it's great when it goes off, but don't expect it to. So the next one we have is Sputtering Bile Blood. So roll a dice each time a wound is allocated to this model that was inflicted by a melee weapon. On a 4+, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound after all the attacks have been resolved. And then its keywords are Chaos, Beast of Chaos, Monsters of Chaos, Monster, and Jabber's Life. So my overall thoughts on this guy are essentially, if you get the Aura of Madness off, fantastic. Brilliant. Great. Can you reliably get it off? No. Can you at least guarantee it will go off once per game? No. Has this guy got a good enough save to survive long enough to get this off? Maybe towards the end of the game because it's been in the game for long enough. No. So, is this guy good enough without the Aura of Madness to take? No. So my overall thoughts of this guy is, if you take him and you've managed to get that Aura of Madness off, fantastic. Otherwise, I wouldn't take him just because, right, the tongue's alright, the claws are alright, and the spike tails, it's alright, but it's only 1 attack and it hits on a 4. You might go, oh yeah, but when this guy takes damage though, more wounds to the enemy. Yeah, half the time. This guy's got, what, 10 wounds? So if I'm looking at this ability right, that means he can dish 5 mortal wounds back to the enemy on average, which is good. But you know, I'm not paying 160 points to do 5 more wounds unspecifically. You know, like not being, you know, 5 more wounds untargeted, just, you know, by whatever happens to attacking. As this guy will be able to be killed by a chaff. So yeah, that's my overall thoughts. If you really like the guy, I'd say, you know, take him along. The time when you do get the Aura of Madness off, you will probably remember that for quite a while and it will be game changing. But just, if you're trying to be as competitive as you can, I just wouldn't take Jabber's Life. I would definitely rather take it like Cockatrice for, you know, like 90 points, you know, for 70 points cheaper. But if you've got one of these guys and you really like the funky rule and you just think it's cool and you think I'm completely wrong with how I describe this guy, then obviously feel free to take it. I just don't think like he adds enough to your army to really justify taking him. And then the next one to look at is going to be the Chaos Gargants, so Chaos Giants. So, towering in stature and possessed of colossal strength and endurance, Chaos Gargants are a terrifying presence on any battlefield. Armed with gnarled tree trunks, lashed to jagged rocks, or severed bones, they batter their way through packed ranks of enemies, swatting aside armoured soldiers and their mounts with ease. Those enemies who draw too close to these titans are splattered underfoot or else picked streaming off the ground, their demise to be decided by the Chaos Gargant at some point later. Now let's see what it's like on the table. So of course it's a behemoth, you know, it's a big giant. Points, so you know, one of course for 170 points. So again, not too expensive either, just 10 points more than the Jabber's Life. And with that, having a look at its stat wheel, we are going to have, there's quite a few attacks to be fair to get through, so we'll get through that in a moment. But the stat wheel has got a movement of 8, but this will go down the more damage it takes. So of course, this is like the first monster we're actually looking at where the damage table does affect its movement, which is quite big. Its start movement is only 8, and then when it's only got, you know, 2 wounds remaining, it's 3. So not great, but you know, it is what it is. Save of 5+, a bravery 6 and 12 wounds. Not too bad there. A Chaos Gargant is a single model armed with a massive club and ferocious headbutt and mighty kick. So the melee weapons has a massive club, so this is a 3-inch range. This starts off with 3d6 attacks, so that's a lot of attacks, but more damage it takes, less attacks it gets. Hits on 3, wins on 3, -1 rend and 1 damage. The ferocious headbutt, or Edbutt as it's called, so 1-inch range, 1 attack, force to hit, 3 wound, -3 rend, and 6 damage. So yes, that is a headbutt that has -3 rend and does 6 damage. Just because. Okay, so then the mighty kick, 2-inch range, 1 attack, 3 to hit, 3 to win, -2 rend, D3 damage. So my summary of the attacks are they're good, just very swingy. Like, you will have some very good combat phases with this guy, and you'll have some where it just almost felt like he never attacked. And then going on to the abilities, there are a few here. There's 4 to go through. So the first one is Timber. So if this model is slain before removing the model from the battlefield, the players must roll off. The player who wins the roll-off picks a point on the battlefield from this model. Each unit within 2 inches of that point suffer D3 mortal wounds. This model is then removed from the battlefield. So, not a bad ability. Again, we can see a very random factor coming on this guy, and unreliability, but it is a load of fun. And then the next one, keeping with the fun theme, is Stuff them in the bag. So, after this model piles in, you can pick an enemy model within 3 inches of this model and roll a dice. If the roll is equal to or greater than that model's wounds characteristic, it is slain. So that's pretty good. It's the whole thing where, like you pick someone up and stuff them in your pants, keep them down there for a while, or her, see how it goes. So yeah, that's alright. Obviously, it's not going to be there to take out really high wound stuff because it has to be double. It's not just beat it has to be double. So even a 1 wound model, you would have to be able to get 2 wound. You have to get a 2 on a dice more, but if it's a 2 wound model, you now need to get 4 more. 6. If it's a 3 wound model, you now need to get 6. So you can see how it exponentially goes up. And then we've got Drunken Stagger for its third ability. So if a charge roll for this model is a double, this model cannot make a charge move that phase. In addition, the players must roll off. The player who wins the roll off picks a point on the battlefield 3 inches from this model. Each unit within 2 inches of this model suffer D3 mortal wounds, so very similar to Timber ability. Again, a fun ability, but not a good ability. There's be very little times where this will be beneficial to you. I honestly believe because, for example, this means this guy can't charge 12 inches. He just can't do it, can't get a double. So yeah, it's a funny ability. And the next one is Whipped into a Frenzy. So at the start of the combat phase, if this model is within 3 inches of any friendly Beast of Chaos heroes, you can whip it into a frenzy. If you do so, this model suffers 1 mortal wound, but you can add 1 to the attack characteristics of this model's melee weapons till the end of that phase. So I'd say this is probably generally worth doing because, you take a mortal wound, but you can make your random attacks now a bit more reliable. Something to bear in mind though is this guy does get weaker every 2 wounds he sustains practically. So if let's say he's taken 2 wounds already, he's still making 3d6 attacks with his massive club. But let's say you whip him and now he's taken 3 wounds. Now he only makes 2 attacks with it, and his Edbutt only does d6 damage. You may be getting that add 1 to attacks, but suddenly you've made your attacks weaker. So just keep an eye on that, I'd say. And then the keywords we've got is Chaos Beast of Chaos, Monsters of Chaos, Gargant, Monster, Chaos Gargant. So my overall thoughts of this guy is he's a cheap monster for 170 points. He's got high wounds. He hasn't got a very good movement compared to the other monsters we've seen. He's got a poor save, bad bravery, and he's just really unreliable. He can do loads of damage or he can do none. Not as unreliable as the Jabba's Life, where it's it has a slight chance it will do something incredible. Every other chance it will do something not worth taking. The Chaos Gargant, I think on average, will be alright. If I'm honest, you're mainly taking this guy because you find him fun. And that doesn't mean like, oh, he's literally not good at all. You only take him if you like him. He can do some stuff, for sure. But don't think, oh, chuck loads of these in here. Got my tournament away list here. Now, I know that the Sons of, like, it's not Beermat, is it? But, you know, Behemoth or something's coming out. And I don't know if that'll change the Chaos Gargant rules, maybe. But I don't think so, because that's a Destruction Battle Tome. But, so it may be subject to change. However, this guy, take if you want a load of fun. All his abilities are fun. I'm not going to lie, if I had this guy, I'd want to run him. Just bear in mind, he's not going to be... Like, if you read his attacks, you go, oh, 6 damage here, 3d6 attacks, you know, that's 18 attacks. Just don't get carried away in optimism, I would say, in my honest opinion. But he is... I would say, for 170 points, you're making a cheap additional threat for your opponent to not be able to just ignore. Your opponent's going to have to deal with this guy at some point. You know? So 170 points, he is cheap, and I think, again, I would take him, see how he does. I think you have to take him a few times to try and get an average on his performance, but he can do some work. And with the Gargant done, the next one we are going to have a look at is going to be the Chimera. So this is kind of like the biggest and baddest one that the Beasts of Chaos have to offer, I believe, certainly for the Monsters of Chaos. So firstly, having a look at its lore. So with powerful beats of its great leathery wings, a Chimera soars through the sky above the battlefield. Its 3 sets of eyes peer down from on high, each hungrily searching for prey amongst the armies gathered below. Then with a bestial howl, the warped beast dives down, teeth and claws barbed, as it prepares to indulge itself in slaughter. A chimera is a terrifying mixture of monstrous parts bound together by raw energies of chaos and imbued with a ferocity surpassing that of any natural creature. The most striking feature of this abomination is its heads, 3, all different from each other, as each resembles some other monstrous creature, such as one that has the head of a dragon, a second that has the head of a lion, and an enormous predatory bird for the third. The draconic head roasts foes with jets of cindering flames before greedily devouring the charred remains. The lion head grips its enemies with brutal ferocity and thrashes back and forth until the tattered bodies fall limp. The avian head uses its cruel hooked beak to puncture even the thickest of armour and pluck out the flesh of those within. Each head operates independently of the others, and though they are prone to violent disagreement as to which prey they should hunt, they are capable of working separately in terrifying concert. Stories of chimeras date back to the earliest days of the age of myth, but since the dark gods extended their reach into the mortal realms, encounters with these frightful creatures have become increasingly common. Like so many beasts of chaos, chimeras have many devolved forms. There are tales of chimeras with bats or crocodile features, and with wings like those of a giant dragonfly. In other chimeras, such as the infamous beasts of the Boa Peak, the 3 heads have the appearance of a human, an elf, and a dwarden. And that is a nice bit of lore of the chimeras. So it's interesting to see they're not just like the standard from Greek mythology, but obviously that's how they tend to come in model-wise, as we see. But it is, the chimera, I think, is an awesome creature. It's also the reason why I've chosen as the back picture for this video going on for the unit cards and stuff. Because, I mean, that's not specifically a GW artwork there. However, it's very cool. And I do not know the artist's name. They did a great job. And like I say, now that we've seen the lore, let's see what he's going to be like on the tabletop. As like I said, he is, I would say, the biggest, nastiest one. He's certainly going to be the most expensive. as he comes in at 220 points. And obviously he's a unit of 1, and he's of course a behemoth. So not like a really expensive monster, you know, at half price for Terrorgeist. Is he as 2 of these good terrorists? Well, we'll get to that in a moment. But going into his war scroll then. So firstly, looking at his stat wheel, he has a movement of 10, has a 5+ save, bravery 6, and 12 wounds. And then his description, so it says a Chimera is a single model armed with fiery breath, an avian head, a draconic head, and a lioness head, however it's pronounced, and mewling claws. So quite a lot of weapons here to go through. As you can see on the unit cards, had to take up a lot of space on this one. So firstly, we have its missile weapon, which is the fiery breath from the draconic head. So it's got a 14-inch range and it's got 1 attack. So what we're going to do is it says see below now. So we're going to go down to the ability and read that straight away. So draconic head's fiery breath. Do not use the attack sequence for an attack made with a Chimera's fiery breath. Instead, the target suffers the number of mortal wounds shown on the damage table above. So then we go back up to the damage table, as you can see that's why I've included all this in the picture. So the draconic fiery breath is d6 mortal wounds. So what that means is you're picking an enemy unit within 14 inches and you do d6 mortal wounds to it. So kind of a little bit similar to what we saw of the cockatrice. Like this is like a much upgraded version of it and much more reliable. But it's a very similar thing there. And 14-inch range is that's a decent range. Don't get me wrong. You can Skyfire's have got, you know, obviously much better than that. But you know, for a monster, that's not bad. So going on to the melee weapons, we have firstly the avian head. So this is obviously the big bird one. So 1-inch range, 3 attacks, freeze the hit, force the wound, and then we have, like I say, like a little star for the rend. So that's -3 rend, but it will get weaker as time goes on. At D3 damage, so not bad there. Wounded on force, bit of a pain, but hit on a 3, which is good. Star on -3 rend, very good. Like I said, it can punch through any armor and breath anything apart, which to be honest, -3 rend, you don't really get much better than that. And then we have the draconic head, so it does the shooting attack, but also does this. So 1-inch range, 3 attacks, force to hit, force to wound, -1 rend, 2 damage. Not too bad. And then the lion head, so this is a 1-inch range, 3 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, and then again a star for damage. So it will get weaker as the more damage this guy takes. So for this damage, it starts off at D6. So that is nice. Okay, and then there's only a couple more things to go through with this guy. So looking at his other ability, so he can fly, obviously, of course, with big leathery wings, and then he has ferocious charge, which is add to the charge rolls for this model just pronto. It's not like add 2 and he has to charge something every turn. Just add 2, which is cool. And then keywords, we've got chaos, beasts of chaos, monsters of chaos, monster and chimera. So I think, obviously, you know, if you take points aside of things, I do think this guy is the best one out of all the monsters we've looked at. I think he's still random because his fiery breath is d6 mortal wounds, and the big damage attack weapon with 3 attacks, the lion head, which is d6 damage, obviously can be very swingy itself. But that is the same characteristics as like a Dragon Maw, apart from it's -1 rather than like -2. So there is still a bit of randomness here, of course, but I'll say he's a bit less random than some of the others, because like the cockatrice to go for 90 points, good punt there to do those mortal wounds they're shooting, but you know, like you're not guaranteed to get it off. Here you are, you're guaranteed to do those d6 mortal wounds. The only thing you can like think about is if the enemy can negate mortal wounds. So that's the only thing that comes into it. It's got a 14-inch range, which means it's got 4 inches more range than the cockatrice. So that's good there. Yeah, I think he's the best monster. I'd rather have him than a Gorgon or a Sigor. I believe just on average. I like it how his movement doesn't get worse as well. So like the Giant, for example, when that is on its last legs, it's got a 3-inch movement. This guy can take 10 wounds and he's still going to be doing 10-inch movement. Yes, his weapon attacks, most of them get weaker. But, you know, his movement's always going to be there. And like late game, that's where you need good movement. If it comes to really late game and you need a monster to do a really good movement, then probably something has gone wrong. But if it has, you really need all the help you can get, essentially. So he's my favourite. I love the lore for this guy as well. I've always been a big, you know, Greek mythology sort of fan and stuff. And I just think it's a cool model. He's something that I might look at getting for my Slanesh Slaves of Darkness, and I might do a conversion. So I do like the model, but I think I can do one that better fits my theme personally, for the sort of like, you know, clean look Slanesh feel to it. Which it'll be interesting to see if I do that at some point. But no, I like the Chimera. But okay, enough of me just saying lovely things. Is it worth 220 points? It's not nearly as, like, the jokey thing I said about the Terrorgeist at the start. Is it as good as, you know, like, are two of these as good as one Terrorgeist? No, I'd rather the Terrorgeist, because the Terrorgeist generally attacks twice anyway, so it's like two of them are attacking. But for Beasts of Chaos, I think it's pretty good. And with that also brings us to, like, the end of the video. So a summary of all the monsters of Chaos. What are my overall thoughts? Because I feel like I've spoken quite positively about them throughout this video, apart from the Chaos Spawn, for obvious reasons. So what are my honest opinions? I'm happy and honest when I'm reviewing them. I mean, you've got to look at a different light, haven't you? I mean, like, are any of these monsters here renowned of, like, oh, bloody hell, that, you know, I don't know, those bloody Razor Gores, they are the reason why I don't like to go to tournaments, because they just, when you play against them, they just stomp you down with their unstoppable charge, apparently. And you just can't win. There's just no point playing against Razor Gores. Obviously, they're not that good. They're not, you know, like, I wouldn't say there's anything here that's game-changing, but I would say there are some tactical options. Like, if, like, for example, like, I haven't even read the, like, summary and positives, negatives for the Chimera, but, you know, like, it can do a lot of damage. You know, it's got good shooting. It's, you know, it's mortal wound output. May only be one mortal wound, but that's one more wound the enemy's going to take. You know, that sort of stuff. But a lot of these monsters have got, you know, poor saves, bad bravery by the Chaos Spawn. Damage output is swingy. That's a big thing I've realised while going through these things. And it's tough unit composition. Like, the way how you build your Beast of Chaos army may, by the time you fit in, you know, like some, like, sounds like some essential Zangor stuff, what a lot of people do, or like you want, you know, your big blocks of like Bester Gores, or, you know, your Bull Gores, etc., or Dragon Ogres, you might not have points left over for these monsters, but they are quite cheap. They're some of the cheapest monsters. I honestly think, and, you know, I haven't gone through every army book and like count to see how many points each monster costs, you know, and done a tally. But off the top of my head, Beasts of Chaos have got a good run in to have the cheapest point costing monsters in an army. Yep, they're not the most powerful, but they can do some tricks. What I like about them, they're not just, all the monsters in this list aren't just, oh, they're a combat monster, but they just can't stand up to anything in combat. You know, if you send them against like a zombie dragon or something, they just wouldn't be able to do it. These guys, you know, they play around that. You know, I know the giant is a combat monster, but, you know, like even the Jabberlife, yep, it's going to do absolutely nothing, but it has that chance of making the enemy do nothing. Like, is it as good as the Terrorgeist? Whatever, it makes the Terrorgeist not be able to do anything. Yeah, why not? Better. So, there's a lot of tactical options. There's a lot of shooting things here. There are also a lot of mortal wounded output from shooting as well, which I do like. And yeah, even like I say, you've got like big expensive things like the Chimera, big expensive 220 points, you know, for Beast of Chaos. Expensive things like that, or you have just punt it with some you know, Chaos Warhounds or like some Razor Gores. I think they're worth giving a go. I think, like I say at the start of the video, where a lot of people say Beast of Chaos can't fight their way out of paper bag. Well, I say depends how strong that paper bag is, and how many times it's being used. You know, Beast of Chaos can play. You just have to play well with them to win your games, and then when you win your games, you know, that's completely down to you, and not down to your army, like some of the other armies out there that get played a lot. So I feel like I'm just going on here. So in summary, Beast of Chaos monsters, not the best monsters out there, be completely honest. They can do good work if you play them right. You can't afford, especially if they're bad saves, you can't afford to muck around them, to make mistakes. If you make mistakes with these monsters, you will truly pay for it. If you put them in the position they're not meant to be in, or they could have been optimized somewhere else and do a better job there, if you don't do that, you will be, you know, like I say, you won't be forgiven. Your monster will die, and you will learn for next time, hopefully. These monsters are to use as tactical. Things like Chimera, like I say, 220 points. You use that. You don't use that as this is going to be my beat stick for the army. You use that to sort of have a flank, piss off the enemy. A lot of the Beast of Chaos stuff is pissing the enemy off by just tying them down and all that sort of thing. If I'm honest, that's how I've reviewed it. But the Chimera, you use it as a way to make the enemy think like, I can't let the Chimera just run around because it has a chance of doing like a good roll for that D6 mortal wounds. I have to send something after it. You know, it's just an irritant basically for the opponent have to think about. If you only have like one good thing in your list or like one thing that can do damage, I know I said the damage for these monsters are swingy, but if you only have one thing that can do damage, like I don't know, a big Zangor unit or something, and then the enemy just debuffs it to shit, and you haven't got anything else that has like, you know, rend or high damage output, a lot of times you're going to be stuck. So just having something like a Chimera, yeah, may not do anything, or a giant, you know, it may just be too swingy and just miss all the time. But there's also a chance that it will do the damage that you need it to do, and you know, who knows, it could be impactful in that moment in the game, which could turn the tide of that game in very specific circumstances. But I hope you've enjoyed my review on these Monsters of Chaos. I very much enjoyed reading about them. I particularly enjoyed reading about the lore as well, because I've never read about the lore about, you know, like a Razor Gore and all that sort of thing, or Chaos Warhound, so it's been very interesting for me to hear about them. Like, say, Chaos Warhounds, great shield, great screening unit, in my honest opinion. And that is truly being honest, not me just trying to say lovely things about Beast Chaos because I'm reviewing them. But this video has gone on for over an hour now, and this is a Monsters of Chaos, which I'm pretty sure there's not an over hour review on Monsters of Chaos on YouTube. I'm just going to say that at a punt because no one has put that much time into them. But like I say, it's part of the Age of Sigmar Army Archive, part of the Beast Chaos Army series. I do promise not to leave any stones unturned. Yes, I realise I didn't review the War Cry, or I think Underworld's team for the Beast Chaos, but you know, those don't really tend to do well anyway, and they're not really worth taking. But you know, leave that aside. Anyway, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Rambling on a lot now. If you did enjoy it, please like, subscribe, smash those buttons. It really does help the channel massively. Allows me to keep doing what I'm doing, and it tells YouTube to recommend this video to other people, which, to be honest, all I want to do is just try and help as many people with their armies as much as I can and get into Age of Sigmar. So hit those buttons. If you've got any questions, please let me know in the comments down below. It'd be great to hear. If you are already a subscriber, thank you very much for watching this. I really appreciate it. To my patrons as well, you guys are the reason why I can continue to do YouTube, so thank you very much. It's all on you. Really do appreciate that. If you'd like to support on Patreon, there will be a link top of the description down below. Feel free to check out. And with that, guys, I'm going to thank you very much for watching this. Remember, until next time, to stay safe, stay hygienic, wash your hands, and of course, remember, Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.